Have you ever looked back and quietly asked yourself, was I there for my own life? My name is David. I'm 75 years old, and only recently did I realize I almost missed it. I spent decades chasing grand moments, milestones, promotions, applause. I was always running, always striving, always reaching for more. But in the chase, I ignored what had been waiting quietly all along. A slow morning, the sound of birds, silence shared with someone you love, a gentle hand on your shoulder, a ritual so simple it seems invisible, the quiet after goodbye. None of these ever made headlines. No one clapped for them. But today, they are what I miss the most. Moments I once rushed past, thinking something greater was ahead. Now I know this was the greatness. Let me share 6 such moments. Moments I once dismissed as background noise, but now carry like sacred scripture. Maybe they'll awaken something in you too. Not loud, not urgent, just present. Because life wasn't hiding in applause or achievement. It was always right here, whispering softly, waiting for me to notice. Chapter 1, A Slow Morning. Have you ever rushed through your morning so fast you couldn't remember how it began? I did. For most of my life, mornings were a blur. Alarms, coffee, traffic, deadlines. I believed being fast meant being successful. I treated stillness like laziness. But one morning after I had nothing left to rush for, I sat in bed, watched the light move across the wall, and heard the silence I had ignored for years. I made tea slowly. I didn't scroll. I didn't speak. I just noticed. The scent rising from the cup, the dust dancing in sunlight, my breath steady and soft. It felt like the first morning I had actually lived. Nothing extraordinary happened. And yet, something sacred had begun. I had always thought peace required escape. But it was here, in the most familiar room I owned, finally visible. I started rising early not to get ahead, but to greet the day. Mornings became my teacher. They whispered, "You don't have to earn this moment. You only have to notice it." For decades, I tried to control time. Now I simply meet it, quietly, without demands. And in that stillness, I've never felt more alive. The world outside didn't change, but I finally arrived in it. If this morning sounds familiar, or if it doesn't, but you wish it did, leave a comment below. Like this video if it made you pause, and share it with someone who rushes too much. We all deserve mornings that begin with breath, not pressure. Let's remind each other, one quiet sunrise at a time. Chapter 2, Watching Birds. Have you ever looked at something ordinary really looked and felt it come alive? I hadn't. Birds were background to my busy life, just fluttering, chirping distractions. But years later, I sat alone on a park bench. No phone, no rush, just stillness. A sparrow landed near my foot. It tilted its head, fluffed its feathers, and looked back. And in that soft exchange, something shifted in me. I noticed the light on its wings, the rhythm of its tiny breath, the way it flew, not to impress, but simply because it could. That one moment slowed me down more than any lecture, any book, any advice. I had been chasing grand experiences, but here was beauty, right beside me, quiet and free. I had never thought wonder could arrive on 2 fragile wings. Watching birds taught me to pay attention not with effort, but with openness. To see what I'd always missed by trying too hard. Their presence was a lesson in enoughness. They weren't trying to be seen. They simply were. And somehow, that gave me permission to be too. Not chasing, not achieving, just breathing, just being. If you've ever felt beauty in a quiet moment, don't brush it off. Comment below with a memory like that. Like this video if you've ever stopped to watch something small and felt it hold the whole world. And if someone you love needs that stillness, to share this with them. We all need reminders that wonder is everywhere if we slow down enough to see it. Chapter 3, Shared Silence. Have you ever sat beside someone you love, and said nothing at all? I used to think silence meant distance, that if we weren't talking, something was wrong. My marriage to Eleanor was filled with conversation, laughter, occasional arguments. I believed love lived in noise, birthdays, toasts, anniversaries. But when Eleanor's voice began to fade in her later years, I had to learn a new kind of language, the quiet kind. We'd sit on the porch for hours, no music, no agenda. Just the hum of dusk and the warmth of our hands side by side. At first, I felt unsettled. Should I speak? Should I ask something? But one evening, as the sky turned gold, she looked at me and smiled just barely, and I understood everything. Silence, I realized, wasn't the absence of love. It was its purest form. Shared silence taught me that connection doesn't always need sound. It needs presence, stillness, trust. The loudest I've ever felt loved was in those wordless hours. Not because something was said, but because nothing needed to be. Love was the comfort of simply existing side by side without performing. Without effort, just being. If you've ever known that kind of silence, tell me about it in the comments. Or tag someone you've shared that kind of love with. Like this video if it reminded you of someone who needed no words to make you feel safe. And if you haven't had that yet, don't worry. That kind of love doesn't shout. It waits. And when it arrives, it stays. Chapter 4: Unspoken Affection. Did someone ever show you love without saying a word? I grew up in a time when affection wasn't spoken. It was implied, hidden, often missed. I tried to show love through duty, through presence, but I rarely said it. Then one afternoon, my son James placed his hand gently on my shoulder as we walked. No words. No context, just a touch. And in that brief contact, something in me broke and healed. I realized I had spent years waiting for permission to express what I always felt. That one gesture from James taught me what I hadn't learned in decades. Affection doesn't need an occasion. It lives in the small, spontaneous acts. A squeeze of the hand, a pause in the hallway, a glance held a second too long. These moments became my dictionary of love, simple, sacred, unforgettable. I stopped waiting for holidays to show my heart. I started saying things, touching more, laughing longer. The quieter I became, the more clearly love spoke back. Unspoken affection taught me that love doesn't always need to be declared. It just needs to be felt. And when we offer it freely, even silently, it has a way of softening everything it touches. Have you ever felt loved without words? Share that moment in the comments. Like this video if someone in your life ever said everything without saying a thing. And if there's someone you love silently, send this to them. Let it say what your heart maybe hasn't yet. Sometimes, the smallest gestures carry the loudest truths. Chapter 5: Soft Rituals. Have you ever done something so simple, so quiet, that it slowly became sacred? In my working years, rituals felt like luxuries. Tea making, gardening, reading slowly. These were things I didn't have time for. I believed value came from urgency, from results. But when I retired, time shifted. My mornings stretched. My afternoons breathed. And in the stillness, I began to notice the quiet magic of repetition. Every day now, I brew tea slowly, mindfully. I choose leaves with care. I listen to the water. I feel the warmth in my hands. I water my plants gently, greeting each one as if they remember me. These rituals, once invisible, have become anchors. They don't perform. They simply hold me in place, softly, steadily, when the world feels uncertain. I used to think I needed big changes to feel alive. Now I know, stillness can be transformative. Rituals taught me that peace isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. A way of showing up to the same small acts with deeper presence each time. In returning to what's familiar, I finally discovered what's essential. Do you have a quiet ritual that grounds you? Share it in the comments. Let others see how simple moments carry sacred weight. Like this video if you've ever felt peace in the ordinary. And send this to someone who might need a reminder. Life doesn't always need to be exciting, sometimes it just needs to be yours. Chapter 6. Quiet Endings. Have you ever feared the end of something just because you didn't know what would come after? I used to think endings meant failure. The end of a job, a season, a relationship, each one felt like loss. But age has a gentler lens. When Eleanor passed, I thought the grief would drown me. But what followed surprised me. The silence, though painful, held something I hadn't expected, Grace. I began sorting her things slowly, touching memories, folding laughter. Each object was a soft goodbye. I cried, yes, but not always from sorrow. Sometimes from gratitude. Grief, I realized, is love with nowhere to go. And in letting go of what was, I honored it more deeply. Endings weren't erasures. They were mirrors showing me what had truly mattered. Now I no longer resist endings. I walk toward them slowly, like dusk aware that what fades was once full of light. The quiet after goodbye has become a sacred space, a room for reflection, a place to hold what was and release what no longer is. Every chapter closes, but some leave warmth on the page long after the words are gone. If you've lived through a goodbye that shaped you, write about it below. Let it live again, shared, honored, remembered. Like this video if you've ever found strength in a quiet ending, and share it with someone carrying something heavy. They might need to know, the end isn't always the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of grace. Final reflection, life in quiet moments. At 75, I've stopped looking for life in grand performances. I've found it in the quiet. Not in milestones, but in mornings. Not in speeches, but in glances. Not in applause, but in a hand resting on mine. The beauty of life was never hiding. It was simply waiting to be noticed. And I, like many, was too busy to look down long enough to see it. Now I treasure what once felt small. The tea I brew each day. The sparrow outside my window. The silence I share with no one. The touch that speaks more than words. The endings that ache but also bless. These are not ordinary moments. They are the soul of a life well lived, and I almost miss them chasing noise. If this story reminded you of your own quiet moments, don't keep them to yourself. Write them in the comments. Like this video if you're ready to slow down. Share it with someone who needs to remember where life actually lives. Sometimes the most extraordinary thing we can do is pause and notice, because that's where peace has been waiting all along.